So welcome everyone to the 13th session in our series on living the truth, called Personal Responsibility and the Falling Away of Personal Will. So that guided meditation that we just did, the guided meditation with Adyashanti, really kind of pointed out is kind of a reflection, the way that Ajay does his meditations. If you want to listen to it again, it's just, if you go to YouTube, it's just a guided meditation with Adyashanti. That's the title, nothing more descriptive than that. But it might be the only one with that exact title. If you'd like to, it's a very powerful kind of contemplative meditation on, the difference between my will, or what we often call free will, and what he calls heart's will, or the divine will, kind of just the moment unfolding, which is the divine will, or the heart's will, flowering. So I'd like to dig into this a little more, and not make it a philosophical discussion. I think it's really clear that this is something that we discover by seeing how being entangled in my will, or the personal will is another word we could use, actually is the seed point for suffering. It's where suffering comes from. When we were doing that meditation, I was really, reflecting with Ajay on what he was saying, and a phone somewhere in the apartment here dinged. And so immediately a thought came up: oh, is there, somebody's phone that's going to ding throughout the throughout the session that we're having tonight? And I could immediately feel, so I immediately then went to the body to feel, oh, there's just a little tiny argument with what is. And I could feel just a little bit of tension arise, and in that moment. It's just so illustrative in sort of my direct experience of tension arising as I sort of was engaged in my personal will, what I want this moment to be like. You can really just feel the tension, and that's what the invitation is in seeing it directly. It's not trying to get rid of what you might call your personal will. That's more just struggling with what is, right? It gets tricky. It's just noticing how being entangled in your personal will is the seed point, is the beginning point for suffering. And when you can let go of that struggle with what is, that personal will, that there's a peacefulness, you could call it even a happiness that arises and can be directly seen. So that's really all, that's the practice in so many ways, is seeing that firsthand in our direct experience. And with that seeing, the engagement with the personal will starts to just kind of fade away on its own. You're not really getting rid of it. It's just kind of losing its juice, or I don't know what the word is, losing its power over us, its ability to move us emotionally and through the world, actually. So it's not a philosophical discussion. That's, I can think back, and I think can see a few faces here that have been to sessions with me for a long, long time, and we've gotten entangled in philosophical discussions around free will, and had what was his name, Sam Harris, talk, and it's a very philosophical and very intriguing for the mind to play with these ideas. And I've really kind of stepped away from that and discovered for myself that although it can be entertaining, it's really not that constructive for seeing the truth. So I've backed away from that in a big way. And communicating this is different. It's difficult. I mean, it's difficult because for the egoic mind to hear that it's again, it's just hearing more that it's part of, it's letting go of it. There will be an argument from the egoic mind, so it can be difficult to receive it, difficult to communicate. But I'll try to do it as directly as I can, and just kind of take whatever kind of resonates from what I say at the deepest level, at that kind of at the level of being. Let's kind of see what level resonates at the level of being with what I'm saying, rather than perhaps arguments from the egoic mind with what I'm saying. And that can be true for any Dharma talk, right? That's really the way that we listen to Dharma talks is from trying to receive what's being said from the place of beingness, from the deeper dimension of our being, rather than from the mind, which may either be fascinated with it or argue with it. So when we're meditating, we're allowing everything to be. So that's our, we hear that, and the intention then is to allow everything to be. But even that mere intention is not allowing everything to be. Having the intention to allow everything to be is already interfering. It's having a filter. Oh, so it gets tricky, right? You can see how tricky this can get. So as long as there's a seeker, as long as there's a wanter, wanting something to occur in the present moment, then the egoic mind is operating. It's in operation, and we can directly see that. So the deeper aspects of the spiritual path that we've been exploring in these sessions together is really a path of the eroding of the personal will, or my will. At its very basic level, it's as you see the suffering and tension that's caused, the anxiety that's caused by this, there's an erosion of it quite naturally. And once you realize once we realize our true nature, which means we realize that there's no self to realize it, then personal will simply disappears. Simply disappears. The silence, really the space of silence, replaces that argumentative chatter that can be common in the mind. A quote from Namgyal Rinpoche: "There is silence when willing ceases. This is meditation. The seeker ceases. This is meditation." Kind of a pith instruction from Namgyal. There is silence when willing ceases. This is meditation. The seeker ceases. This is meditation. So when my will disappears, the truth, or the truth can really reveal itself, and the heart's will, what I've been calling the true heart in past sessions, or divine will, as Ajahn called it, can really flower, can be seen. And as I've said in the past, when you started this journey, you probably didn't sign up for or count on the eradication of personal will as being the what it's all about. Yeah, really what it's all about. The fact that you're here, I mean, there's a relatively small group. You saw, something about the personal will. Some people will not come to it, won't want to go to a talk that approaches the practice where it's so directly challenging their sense of self. It's the self at the deepest level, right? The notion of personal will. And the other thing I'd like to say is you can't make this happen. You're not trying to get rid of the personal will. So it's not like it's something you do. It's that's just more will in action. So it can't become a project. You simply see the suffering that arises when there's this craving and clinging, this wanting and not wanting. You can really directly see this energy of my will, the personal will. You can see how it underpins the motivation for certain things. It propels us, and how it is the seed of suffering. And let me say something else. It's not, personal will isn't bad or wrong. I mean, you wouldn't get up in the morning, right, without some element of personal will to get on with the day. So there's always going to be an element of my will that's there. You don't stick your hand in fires because fires look pretty. I've used that as an example. If we didn't have any this kind of personal will, you would maybe just jump out in front of cars or stick your hand in a fire because it looks kind of amazing and you want to touch it. So we're not trying to get rid of it. We just see it for what it is. So you see a loss of this egoic personal will as the spiritual practice deepens. And you can even transcending. So I've used the different words. I've kind of used transcending the ego as pointing to a kind of momentary tasting, and I've used the word falling away, which is kind of an ending of a chunk of what of personal will. So even that momentary transcending, just for a very short time, can have profound effects. You set in motion, just transcending egoic will for a second or two. It sets in motion this ebbing away of personal will, of my will. It's like you've stuck a pinhole in a beach ball, and now the air is just slowly leaking out of that beach ball. You can try to, and you can try to stop it and plug it with your finger, but short of a vinyl patch, which I don't know exists in the spiritual sense, that the personal will is going to continue to flow out of that. The air is going to flow out of that beach ball in the same way that personal will start to ebb and flow and fall away. So that's that's why we these reflective meditations can be very helpful, and why I also gave you the location of that meditation by Ajah, because it's one that you can kind of listen to numerous times and see what arises as you reflect in the way that Ajah is inviting us to. And once you've got that pinhole in the beach ball, there's nothing you can do to stop the air. There is no vinyl patch, right? The personal will ebb, will fall away, and resisting its ebbing is actually quite painful. It's even more and more of a painful argument with what is, because truth is trying to is revealing itself, and there's if there's a struggle with that, it can be quite painful. But we do it anyway, because to the ego can only interpret this in a negative way. So it will resist it. It seems like at times it can see like life is falling apart. I'm not interested in things I was interested in before. Things that I thought were so important to my happiness that seem to not matter. And it can be quite confusing and disorienting, as I've pointed out in the past. Jason just shared the link on YouTube to that meditation. And you can't know what it's like until it actually happens. Like you can't sort of think, oh, this is what it should, maybe it'll feel like this. It's just something that appears as you do those kinds of reflections and see, like the Buddha pointed out in the Four Noble Truths, you're simply seeing the cause of suffering, right? And the cessation of suffering. So you're simply seeing how attachment to personal will causes suffering, and you're seeing how letting go of personal will, you see the cessation of suffering and the arising of peace and stillness and happiness. So it's the Four Noble Truths in different words is basically what I'm putting out there for you. So it's a direct experience, and it sneaks up on you. It's something else to, you might do that reflection numerous times. You might do, similar meditations, allowing everything to be as it is, not doing meditation in the way that we've been doing it, where you're not really trying to manipulate things. You're not trying to, it's not technique driven. It's simply, when I guide meditations, more often than not, I'm just saying in so many words, leave everything alone and just be present with whatever's happening, right? I have like 100 different ways of saying that, and it's just one of the 100 will resonate with one person or another. So that's really what we're doing in the practice, and it'll just kind of sneak up on you. You wake up one morning and you'll realize that some aspect of your personal will has ebbed away. And it really gets cranked up when you start to see no self, when you start to experience and see no self, as we've been practicing here. So I don't know that I need to say too much more about how this can be upsetting to the egoic mind. I think you folks have heard me talk about that and likely experienced that aspect of the practice, that it's this ebbing of my will is upsetting. I mean, I said it's confusing and disorienting. It's actually upsetting. So it fights it. The egoic mind will fight it. That's part of the process. We're conditioned in different ways to resist the process in different ways. Some will blame the teacher. Some will blame somebody else. Some will try to go to another teacher. Some will, we're all karmically conditioned to react, to resist this in different ways. But all of it doesn't ultimately work. The ego can slow the process, but it can't stop it. So you can put your finger over the hole in the beach ball and slow the air from coming out, but ultimately the air still seeping out of the beach ball around your finger. You can't ultimately stop. Maybe I'm overusing the beach ball metaphor, but I really do I really do feel it's got that aspect of being in the same way that air just kind of the personal will just kind of deflates in that way, kind of a slow process. And you're coming into a new way of being as that ebbing away is occurring. You're connecting with a different dimension, a deeper, truer dimension of your being that is most often overlooked. We're recognizing it, as Rupert put it in a talk, a piece that we listened to a week or two ago. So we're coming into this new way of being, this connection with our deepest true self. And we can live from that connection. We can live from beingness. And you will notice quite a different will, a clear, compassion, loving will. That's, I think, why we often call it the heart's will, or the true heart emerges, and we live from that place. It's a very natural way of being once it's connected with, once it's seen and recognized. So we're not living from our past conditioning. We're living life from life as life. We're not living out of our personal will. We're not living out of my will. We're living out of heart's will. And touching into happiness. And not the happiness, not the surface happiness that we can feel. We can feel a certain surface happiness from satisfying my will. And we get some, and then in fact that's why we keep doing it. We get a fix of it, and we want more. It's not it's not the surface happiness that we get from that. That only occurs when certain conditions are met. When the conditions aren't met, we're no longer happy. We can be even more unhappy. It's when we forget ourselves, when the personal will is let go, that we are truly happy. I'm going to play a short clip. I'll see if I got it here somewhere. So I'm going to play a Rupert Spira clip. We're going to start to link this in, and I'll let you folks do it in our dialogue that we have. And this talk by Rupert Spira is called "There is no personal responsibility." So this is really going to, if the egoic mind isn't cranked up yet, from what I've been saying so far, this may well be the piece that gets the egoic mind kind of cranky. But we'll see. But you know what? Maybe not. I'm just guessing at this point.
There's no.
Okay, let me just get it right at the beginning.
There's no individual agent inside the body orchestrating the activities of that particular body and mind. I mean, just ask yourself now, for instance, how many activities, chemical reactions are going on in the body right now?
I don't know. There's thousands.
But I think billions is probably closer. No. I don't know. Let's say
zeros. Lots of zeros.
Let's say lots and lots of zeros. Yeah. Now, even from a conventional point of view, how many of those do you have control over?
I would say none.
Okay, you'd say none. Most people would say my thoughts and my movements. I mean, most people would say, one or two. I mean, what kind of control is that, to be able to control one or two things out of billions?
I mean, control, I can tell. Okay.
I mean, even from a conventional point of view, the idea of there being a controlling entity inside the body or the mind is absurd. And contemporary biology and science and physics and is now recognizing this. I mean, just take our thoughts. Obviously, what everybody wants more than anything else is to be happy. And what prevents us from being happy is the thought that says, I don't like what's going on. Yeah. So obviously, the first thing we would do if we could control our thoughts would be to choose for our thoughts to be totally okay with what's going on. My wife's just gone off with a neighbor. Response, that's fine with me. If we can control our thoughts, shouldn't we be able to have that thought? And wouldn't that be the thought that you chose? Because then it would be fine. There would be no problem. Can we do that? No, we can't. I mean, that should be enough to persuade anybody, everybody, that they don't control their thoughts.
So then, any suggestion how one ought to live one's life? And when we tend to make plans, I think I'm going to get on a plane on tomorrow. Who knows? Yeah,
you just live whatever God places in your lap. Yeah, is just what you get. If the thought, the feeling of hunger just appears, you don't create it. Then next thing after the feeling of hunger appears, the sensation of hunger rather, the thought appears, okay, let's call a friend and go out to dinner at a local restaurant. Or the thought appears, let's see what I've got in the fridge. You can't do anything about it. One of those two thoughts or some other thought is going to appear. Whichever thought that appears, your body is going to go either to the local restaurant or to the fridge or whatever. So just everything that you need will be provided.
But if the thought is one of apparent destructiveness, like, there's a bottle of whiskey, I think I'll have that.
Okay, if that thought appears to you, you're going to find yourself going to the bottle of whiskey and drinking too much of it.
Good thing I don't like whiskey, but I like wine. So
the fact that you don't like whiskey is just a part of the conditioning of your body, which you have absolutely no control over. I mean, you might have been given a body that liked whiskey. Did you choose not to like whiskey and to like wine? No, not at all. Just the way you found yourself.
So then if somebody has behavior, whether it's antisocial behavior or even criminal behavior or addictive behavior, that's just what's happening? Or
yes, there's no entity that is responsible for that behavior. That behavior is a response that has been conditioned the thoughts and feelings that lead to that behavior are just a result of that person's conditioning plus genetics plus, whatever it is that conditions any single action. But there's no individual responsible.
So then there's no responsibility.
There's no personal responsibility. And strangely, understanding this doesn't make us behave in irresponsible ways. It's when we believe there is personal responsibility that we find ourselves behaving in irresponsible ways. When we feel, I am a separate person, it is that feeling that gives rise to irresponsible behavior. Let's take an extreme. What enabled Hitler to behave like he did? What was the founding thought behind his behavior?
His ego, his belief in a
deep sense of being a
Right.
separate self. Without that feeling, it would have been impossible for him to think, feel, act, and relate like he did. So it's the apparent presence of the separate self that makes us behave in irresponsible ways. When that sense of separation goes, we don't find ourselves going around trashing people and behaving in unkind, ugly, irresponsible ways. No, our behavior is in line with the totality and serves the totality.
So there's lots to chew on there. So I think I'll just open it up for dialogue and see sort of where, how this is all resonating with people at how they're receiving it. We've been working through these teachings for a while, so this is where I guess the rubber hits the road, you could say, in so many ways, and just seeing how you're feeling about what I've said, and then what Rupert has said.
Oh, I don't want to take up too much time. I really I want to hear other people's dialogue. But I actually wrote a poem today for this session, and I was hoping to read it. If I can. It's called Big Bad Vlad. What if Big Bad Vlad didn't exist? Would there still be a war in Ukraine? As much as I would like to think that he isn't, maybe Big Bad Vlad is really just doing his best, just as much as me and you. I wonder what is going through his mind right now. Murder, impunity, perceived need for vengeance, creating his own atonement plan. Jesus died for our sins. Big Bad Vlad kills you for yours. This kind of makes him very similar to the Old Testament God, who punishes swift and heavy-handedly all those deemed as sinners, even though he created both the sins and the sinners himself with his own mind. Isn't this kind of what we all do, though? Create our own personal versions of good and evil, lauding and praising the former, hating and ignoring the latter. Each of us a victim of circumstance, of the arising causes and conditions in this moment, in every moment. Except that we don't have mighty armies and an arsenal of nukes to enact our personal vengeances, to root out and kill in others that which we dare not root out and embrace in ourselves. How many coffins, mass graves, and burial grounds have been filled with dead bodies of our own self-hatred and separation, by our own inability to see others as self and self as other. I can't help but think now, maybe Big Bad Vlad isn't so bad after all. He just is.
Thank you for that, Jason. That's a lot of heavy stuff in there, heavy thinking, and clearly on your mind and on a lot of our minds. Thank you. I did have a bit of a question that was rattling around in my brain as tonight as you're talking, Stephen, as we listened to the clip from Rupert, and it's around sort of, you talked about having will is not bad, or it's there, right? We have to coexist with it. Well, at least that's what I felt I was hearing. And so is it then that we have to find some balance between the inevitable will that we have, like we have to get up in the morning, or somebody needs our help, and so on, and the balance between that and being in tune at the same time with our inner will, our heart will, following what we know is right, what we know to do, what we know we need and others need, and what's right. Would be helpful. Insight there.
So you don't need to find a balance. It's not something you need to do. And that statement can actually it can cause more consternation. Because then if they, okay, now I have to figure out sort of which part of personal will I should let go of, and which part I should hang on to. And it just doesn't unfold that way. It's more as the personal will that is causing, as you see the tension arising. So to go back to direct experience, you'll see tension arise at that, as the very moment that you're engaging in wanting something in the moment to be different as it is. You'll notice a tension, and just keep it that simple, and it'll the falling away, what needs to fall away will look after itself, and the will that you need not to stick your hand in a fire will stick around. Right? There's not any cases where that's been a problem that I know of, at least. So it'll all kind of look after itself. Amy just put in I don't know if it was to all of us or just to, I can't tell, in the chat, that there's many wills. And you could say that there's different wills that emerge. This is really the way I'm kind of painting it, is to say there's no thing called an ego. There's no thing called a personal will. It's just psychological processes. So you could say this: the personal will has many levels to it. Again, it just even not even needing to figure that out keep going back again to keeping it really simple, noticing tension in the body, even just when there's a struggle with the present moment, or when there's a struggle with what is. It can be that simple, just moment after moment after moment. Oh, and for me, I feel tension so quickly when there's a struggle with what is. It's like a wake up bell, or a wake up alarm even. And so just again, keeping it that simple, and that simplicity allows the depth to naturally unfold. And I think the more we kind of complicate it with figuring out what will means and what the more we're simply engaged, it more that it becomes a project of the egoic mind or the personal will. Right. And again, I know you know that, Anita, but no, I myself need reminding of these teachings over and over. But so I offered in that spirit.
Stephen, there's an aspect of Adyashanti's talk that I'm not really sure I'm understanding when he's talking about accepting what is. We've touched on this topic, of course, many times in the past, and my general understanding was that accepting what's in the present now means not denying the reality of what's already there. And we often tend to be in a state of denial about a lot of things and resist and so forth. But I'd understood that at the same time, it's okay to sort of want things to be different. I mean, there is the idea of right effort. I mean, you're wanting to do things, and then there's, maybe it's not just personal will, but when he talked about divine will, and in the context of what is, he seemed to be saying, we know it's divine will, like what is right now, it's because that's what is right now. And I'm not sure what he meant there. And like, I know in sort of Christian traditions, I mean, there are some sort of conservative kind of views that God has everything predetermined and has decided everything that's happening. And if there's suffering, it's because God wanted that to happen. But then there's sort of another camp that is more, I think more in the mystical side, that is along the lines that, you know, there's sort of a life force, there's a divine will that is perhaps wanting it to grow, to live, to dance, but it's not fixed in any way. And Adyashanti almost sounded like, you know, what is what's predetermined, and don't try to change anything. And I doubt that's what he meant, but I'm trying to make sense of what he was saying in that context.
Yeah, you're correct in that that's not what he that's not his reality. That it's not what he's seen. That, you know, that everything is predetermined. But it may have sounded that way, right? It's again the way words fail sometimes. I think perhaps what he was saying is he's pointing to the way things are in this moment is the way things are in this moment. They couldn't be any other way, and that's the divine nature of it. It doesn't mean that, you know, it stays this way, right? We still, as he said at the end, we're empowered. It empowers us to act with clarity in the world, from the true heart, as I've talked about in the past. We're now operating from our true heart, which is the recognition of one, which can only be from a place of personal responsibility, or from, take away the word personal, even from the place of right action. It cannot be any other way. And as Rupert was saying, there's only irresponsibility when there is a sense of separation. It can't be any other way. That's also divine. It's all divine. There's nothing in the present moment that is not divine. Doesn't mean we can't change the next moment to be different. That's also divine. And the fact that we're confused about some of the teachings is also divine will. So we don't have to, we're not resisting that. The fact that we're resisting, perhaps your mind right now is going, is resisting what was said, is also divine. The divine will unfolding, life unfolding. I think you used the word life force. And I think Ajay did as well. The life unfolding. It's life unfolding. And that's what we're connecting with, is that aspect of our being, which is life living as us, which is divine, is the grace. I mean, there's all these words, right? What do they mean? But it's pointing to something that deeper dimension, which is what's unfolding. Yeah, that's really, what we're trying to get at with these words we're using, is touching into that deeper dimension, that divinity, that grace. Yeah.
So if I can just, so that helps a lot, but, and if I could just take sort of a concrete example of, the Ukraine situation. So it is what it is, that there's terrible things happening. So, and there's no point in resisting that's what is there right now. Now I can react to it in different ways, and I can react to the conditioned mind, and that could, lead me to vengeance and just reactions based on anger and so forth. But there's a possibility of reacting from sort of the collective oneness from the divine, which still might accept that this is what's here in this moment, but might seek nevertheless to take action to change that, to respond. And I think that's what you're saying as well, so that it's more what is the source of that leaning, that action, that effort. Is it coming from the conditioned, or is it coming from life and the divine? And if we pay attention to it, and it really is from the collective, from that sense of oneness, then action that flows from that may be right action, appropriate action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've summed it up nicely. And the appropriate action in the case of the war in Ukraine may be to shoot missiles at Russian planes. I mean, that's that may be hard to hear from as a Dharma practitioner, because we're it's non-harming, right? It's one of our basic tenets is non-harming. But non-harming in this case may mean not the least harm. And for least harm to occur may be to actually shoot a missile. And that may be the action that flows from our connection with our deepest being. So now I've challenged now I've challenged this at a different level. Like there's so many levels that this can resonate, but there's I'll try and send out there's a talk by I think I shared it with some of you, by Thich Nhat Hanh with Maureen, I think, and maybe I just, whatever names I could kind of find in my email list, I knew Maureen would be interested in it because she asked that question last session. And he actually talks about, near the end of the talk, about this aspect of least harm, that coming from a place of wholeness and peace and non-violence. It could mean taking up arms. And to hear Ty say that is deep, because he is so much engaged in peace in every step, right? Peace in the world and so on. So that's I'll see if I can find that and send it out in the next email. Yeah. Yeah. Amy just said, read a quote from a war vet that the best way to not cause harm is to refrain from harm. Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah. There's instances where passive resistance and nonviolent civil disobedience, for example, is what arises. Gandhi standing up to the British Empire. That image always comes to mind when I think of civil disobedience, is what arose for the people in India at the time. And I really believe for Gandhi, it arose from a deep connection with his deepest, his beingness. It came from his sense of oneness.
Jason, first, thank you very much for sharing with us. That was very thoughtful on your part. I appreciated that. And I have in me, there's a bit of a conflict between what Rupert said about there being no responsibility. And it seems in a way to me that that's in direct contrast to the Eightfold Path. I guess I have trouble with the concept that there's no such thing as free will. Anyway, if you could comment on what seems to me to be an apparent contrast between Rupert's idea of no personal responsibility and almost the commandments of the Eightfold Path.
Okay. Yeah, great question, Maureen. It's and the precepts as well, right? the different precepts and the Eightfold Path as well. Well, you could call them sila, the aspects of sila in the Buddhist teachings around the ethical trainings, right? And so if one is one is operating from the belief in a limited self, then one requires ethical trainings, because as Rupert said, we can only act irresponsibly if there is a belief in a separate self, a belief in separation. So if there's a belief in separation, then there is a real need for these ethical trainings. Once the belief in separation no longer exists, and that we've experienced no self, and the personal will has fallen away, there's no way we act irresponsibly. So there's responsible action is what is the only outcome. So we naturally align with the ethical trainings. So the ethical trainings the sila is a very important foundation of the Buddhist teachings, and it enables us to act responsibly, non-harming, and so on. And it also aligns our behavior, our actions, with truth, the truth of oneness. So even though we may not have seen oneness or seen wholeness, those trainings align us with it. And that's why the Buddha and Thich Nhat Hanh, he called them all mindfulness trainings, not, commandments, or not, because with the belief of separation, we're going to act irresponsibly. And the constructive practice isn't to then beat ourselves up for it and to judge ourselves. It's to see, oh, this is what happens when I act in this way. There's suffering for myself, there's suffering for others. And I can then, next time I can learn from this. So they're trainings. I begin again, right? The whole begin again way of engaging. So that's why there are those ethical trainings, and why they're so important. Does that answer the? Yeah, and I've said in the past in classes that we don't need. I think I said this, and somebody got quite upset with me. We don't really need these ethical trainings once the truth is seen. And I go, oh, that can't. What do you mean by that? And of course, I made a statement without giving the teachings that went up to that statement. That was something I did too often in past teachings. You can't really kind of shock somebody in the truth, and that's kind of like trying to. That's because that's a shocking statement, right? Without having the spiritual growth and foundational teachings that can allow you to hear that and let it resonate at a deeper level, right? Which is where we're at here in these sessions that we're having. Like somebody could log on to these and start listening to this and go, oh my God, this stuff's way out there. Like, what are we talking about here? Because you're not having kind of followed along with, what wholeness is, what oneness is, and so on. Jason says the river and the raft. Exactly. It's the teachings take you to the other shore, but then you don't carry the raft takes you to the other shore, but then you don't put the raft and carry it around. You kind of let go of that teaching and engage with the next teaching that allows truth to flourish, to unfold for you. Yeah, a good analogy. People are using this chat function. It's kind of new. I'm having to. That's kind of cool. Is everybody seeing all the chat things? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good.
Well, I guess, Stephen, that these statements are only shocking if you really, as you say, if you don't have the foundation.
Yes.
If we have the foundation, they're not shocking.
Exactly.
They're kind of obvious.
Yes. I'm so yes.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that. Happy to hear that. Yeah. Yeah. At some point, after a while, I'm going to say stuff, and you're going to go, when's Stephen going to say something? And, that's not kind of obvious, or like, that's when the air's pretty much out of the beach ball.
That's a comment that I heard about two teachers, the Buddha and Muhammad, that they say that they make contradictory statements. The answer is that they adapt their teachings to their audience. So depending on the audience is, you have to massage things a little bit. And then as you massage them a little bit to adapt them to the audience, they may appear contradictory.
Yeah.
And that's the art of the teacher. That's why some of
Exactly.
us are teachers and some of us aren't.
Yeah, you really do have to direct, and the Buddha was a master at directing the message to the person or persons that he was addressing. If you want to hear how I do that, like come to a Go Boomerang session. So these are people that come to this wanting just to learn mindfulness and how they can have some more peace. I know Joanna's been to, and you kind of see how I'm saying the same thing, right? How to respond rather than react by, allowing things to be. And it's just, but it's just that in a different way that allows people to access the teachings in a way that, they don't just, the wall doesn't just go up. It allows them to engage and to find a little peace. Remember one of my favorite quotes, and I'll end on that, of who is it that Ajahn Chah, let go a little, have a little peace, let go a lot. There's a lot of peace, let go completely, and complete peace. So it's really, the teachings start with you let go a little, and a little bit of peace occurs. Oh, I can actually engage with some situations where I don't fly off the handle. I can kind of pause and then respond in a more clear and balanced way. And so that's a little piece, and that's kind of a stepping stone for everybody I've ever met anyway. There's some people where they fall off the bar stool and they're immediately enlightened, but I've never met that person. It was great. It was great to be here and see you all from Canmore. It's now dinner time for me instead of almost bedtime. So it's great to see you all, and yeah, we'll see what comes up for next week. If you have any ideas, let me know. Take care.
Thanks.
Stephen, bye
Good to see
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good to see everyone. Good
Be
night.
well.
Hi, everyone. Good night.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Well.
Take care.
Bye.
Hey.
Bye.